The sky turned a grayish-gray. Winds whipped up a giant wall of desert dust that towered hundreds of meters. On what should have been a normal Monday afternoon, a powerful dust storm, known as a haboob, hit the Phoenix metropolitan area and surrounding areas, creating unexpected chaos and palpable fear for thousands of residents. The storm began with the collapse of a monsoon thunderstorm system over central Arizona, which generated strong winds and lifted dust particles from the dry desert soil. Around 3 p.m. local time, the wall of dust began to appear on the southern Phoenix skyline. Within less than an hour, visibility plummeted to near zero on major highways like I-10 and I-17. Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport suspended all flights for more than an hour, while traffic lights went out and trees were downed across the city. Cities like Chandler, Gilbert, Tempe, and Coolidge were also directly affected, with skies plunged into darkness and winds shaking buildings and vehicles. Phoenix resident Bernie Boykin Heitzman recounted the terrifying experience of the storm's impact. She was driving with her 2 children when the winds began to shake their car. The sky suddenly turned black. I had to stop and calm my children down. It felt like I was in the middle of a tropical storm, she said, her voice trembling. Richard Philly, a former university professor living in Gilbert, called the storm a natural phenomenon that was both amazing and terrifying. He added that the storm's strength far exceeded any previous haboobs he had witnessed while living in Arizona. According to data from poweroutage.us, more than 55,000 homes in Maricopa County experienced power outages. Public services such as transportation, communications, and water were disrupted. Some hospitals had to rely on backup generators, while schools in the affected areas suspended classes. The Arizona Department of Transportation issued a stern warning to drivers to pull over and hang on during the storm. Many vehicles were stranded on the roadways, and several minor accidents were reported due to near-zero visibility. National Weather Service meteorologist Mark O'Malley explained that the storm was the result of the interaction between a weakening monsoon system and extremely dry ground conditions. This is a typical late summer pattern in the desert Southwest. However, the intensity this time was extraordinary, he said. He added that the collapsing thunderstorms created a strong downdraft, which swept dust and sand from the ground and formed a wall of dust known as a haboob. This phenomenon can last for several hours, and its impacts can be felt well into the next day, he explained. On Tuesday, recovery teams began clearing roads of fallen trees and debris. Power services began to be gradually restored, and the airport resumed operations, albeit with some delays. Local governments set up temporary relief centers for affected residents, providing clean water, food, and dust masks. Authorities also reminded residents to stay indoors during poor air quality and to use air purifiers and KN95 masks if they must leave their homes. Videos circulating on social media showed a giant wall of dust rolling over the city of Phoenix, engulfing tall buildings and highways in a thick brown haze. The sound of howling winds, blacked out lights, and residents running for cover provided a vivid picture of the chaos. Several local photographers managed to capture this rare moment, showing the dramatic contrast between the blue sky and the darkness in a matter of minutes. The photos have become symbols of the unstoppable power of nature. This dust storm was more than just a meteorological event. It was a reminder of human vulnerability in the face of nature. Despite technological advancements and urbanization, this storm demonstrated that the power of nature can still paralyze a major city in an instant. For many residents, this experience was a turning point in how they viewed the environment. "I will never underestimate the weather again," said one Phoenix resident. "We live in the desert, and the desert has its own way of showing its power." The devastating dust storm that struck Arizona on September 1, 2025, resulted from a complex interaction between atmospheric dynamics, fragile ecological conditions, and systemic stressors caused by human activity. Meteorologically, the storm was triggered by the collapse of a monsoon thunderstorm system, which generated a powerful downdraft. When cold air from the storm clouds touched the dry, arid ground, it swept dust and sand particles into the air, forming a giant wall of dust known as a haboob. This phenomenon is not new to Arizona's desert regions, but the intensity and scope of the storm far exceeded previous events. Behind these atmospheric mechanisms were ecological conditions that magnified the storm's impact. Extreme summer heat and significantly below normal rainfall had made the soil fragile and susceptible to wind uplift. Extensive urbanization in the Phoenix metropolitan area has transformed the desert landscape into residential areas and highways, reducing the natural vegetation that would otherwise act as a dust barrier. Unsustainable land use practices, such as desert scrub clearing and open land expansion, have increased the area vulnerable to wind erosion. In addition, anthropogenic factors exacerbate the risk. Global climate change has lengthened the dry season and increased the frequency and intensity of unstable thunderstorms, creating ideal conditions for extreme dust storms. Urban planning that fails to account for dust storm risk mitigation, such as a lack of green zones and vegetative buffers, amplifies the direct impact on residential areas. Lack of public education and incompletely integrated early warning systems left many residents unprepared for the storm, even after warnings were issued by local authorities.
Sandstorm in Casa Grande, Arizona.
Overall, the 2025 Arizona dust storm is a clear example of a systemic disaster. It was not caused by a single factor, but by the interaction of extreme weather, ecological vulnerability, and human decisions that mutually amplify risk. Natural phenomena like the haboob can become catastrophic when they encounter unprepared social systems. Urbanization without ecological mitigation magnifies the impact of phenomena previously considered routine, and climate change not only amplifies extreme weather but also extends the risk season. This storm serves as a reminder that we live in an interconnected system. The atmosphere, land, cities, and people are not separate entities. They influence each other and collectively shape risk. To prevent similar events in the future, we need urban planning that adapts to desert climates, restoration of dust-retaining vegetation in vulnerable areas, more inclusive and educational early warning systems, and a global commitment to emissions reduction and climate adaptation. Because behind every storm, there's a story of choice, unpreparedness, and hope for change.
That is a wall of dust.